Whether you're a life coach, therapist, biohacker, invested in wellness, or in the healthcare profession, if you have an intention to work in psychedelic spaces, you're in the right place then. If you're called, get involved. But first, get informed. Let's talk the 4 N's: intake, intention, in-space integration, leading to deeper transformations. Psychedelic Coach Podcast, Tah and Kole. Walk you through the process, it's all possible. Leave space for the follow-through. Most importantly, integration is not optional.
What up, y'all? There's a lot of buzz going on right now around legalities and decriminalization and will I get into trouble for psychedelics and state-altering plants. And I want to talk to y'all about what's going on at Tah and Pathogenics. They have a new category of natural and pathogenic supplements that are designed to help people feel more alive as they navigate everyday anxiety and stress. All of their proprietary offerings feature Kanna, which is a powerful South African botanical being a plant, that's clinically proven to lift mood and sharpen cognitive function. And I know I love to have my cognitive function lifted because I'm always talking about stuff and getting deep. And Kanna, this supplement, I've gone through trials with this supplement. I used their first batch and it was awesome. But the new formulation has been absolutely wonderful for me. And Kole and I microdosed this for 30 days straight. And I mean, the shift, and you know, I'm skeptical about everything. The lift in my mood after 30 days was after 15 days was absolutely amazing. My ability to show up cognitively clear was tremendous. And my mood, just the way I felt, the way I feel when I take this supplement is amazing. And Kanna is known to many as the happiest plant on earth. It's been an essential ingredient, a medicinal and social and spiritual cultural space in South Africa for millennia. Its discovery was revolutionary and it was unearthed by the early inhabitants known to mankind. Okay, so the South African hunter-gatherers chewed on Kanna's roots to enhance their mood, focus, and energy while on multi-day hunts. So this is a plant that is absolutely amazing. It's gentle. It's empathogenic. It's actually like a natural SSRI. And so if you're taking SSRIs or SNRIs or MAOIs, this is not the plant for you. But I'm telling you, this is amazing. And we're actually we're going to be doing some test groups with this and running a microdosing group with this, and it's completely legal. And our coaches are actually leaning into it as well. So I highly recommend you slide over to Tah and Pathogenics and check out what they're doing with their Kanna supplements. It's absolutely stupendous, miraculous, fantastic, and all the good stuff. So we have the link in our show notes and you'll get 10% off if you use the link in our show notes. I love you and I can't wait to see you on the podcast. Welcome to the Psychedelic Coach Podcast. This is Tah, and before we get started, I would love it if you would just hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast. Welcome, y'all. Today we're going to talk about fear of failure. And as a coach, I hear about this all the time. It's not just isolated to psychedelics. And I know I say that a lot. It's not just isolated to psychedelics, because it's not. Nothing is isolated to psychedelics. And being informed about psychedelics is really, really important. But one of the things that people used to come to Kole and me, right? Didn't come to I. They came to me. I'm a grammar stickler like that. So anyway, people would come to me and Kole and be like, man, I'm just so afraid that I'll fail. I'm afraid I'll disappoint my family. I need to be a better parent. And it's usually a lot of men with, I want to be a better father. I'm afraid that I'll fail and my kids will be disappointed in me or my mom will be disappointed in me. And I know that was a big thing for me, is I was very, very afraid of disappointment from my mom. And I hid and lied and did a whole lot of stuff. And I was frightened. I was frightened to fail. And my fear of failure led me into a place where I wouldn't do things because I was so afraid that I would fail and disappoint my mother that I just wouldn't do anything. And I got stuck. And I was stuck in a lot of kind of half-ass mediocrity where I wouldn't go up against anybody because I was afraid that I would fail. And so I would just not have to deal with the burden of the potential of failing by just being mediocre, playing small, not living up to my potential, not shining my light, lying about a lot of things. It was a real rough space. That's my story with it. And I bring my story to the table because it's relative to a lot of people, and I can only speak from my perspective. And that's what I'm speaking for. I'm speaking from my perspective. And many times I speak about these things and people are like, man, I thought I was the only person. You're not. You're not the only person navigating fear of failure. I had it big time. As an aspiring hip hop artist, and I was pretty successful when I was touring around doing hip hop music. I was always in this position like, well, what if I get on stage and I mess up my lines, right? I mess up my rhymes, or what if my freestyle is whack, or whatever. And I was petrified that somebody would not like me. And this is a form of people pleasing and a form of fawning. Is, I have to make an experience good for somebody else, or I just don't make the experience. It's a very, very challenging space. It's a very, very dangerous space for the individual's self-esteem, is this fear of failure space. So what do you do about fear of failure? How do you lean into it? Well, for me, I'll speak for me because Cole's not here with me right now. I love you, Cole. She's not here with me right now, so I'll speak for myself. And one of the things that I lean into is actually knowing what it is that's driving the fright. And because when we talk about fear, it often gets, I like to use the word fright. Let's put it this way. I'm not even going to go down the rabbit hole. I'm going to keep it really, really basic right now. If you've ever heard of fight or flight, this is the cornerstone of talk right now in self-help. It's like, oh, you're in fight or flight. Fight or flight is the ultimate rescue method for the human organism when it's threatened, when there's a potential of violence against the organism, your organism being your mind, your spirit, your body, your heart, your emotion complex, your microbiome, all of these things, when they're threatened, the body goes into a protective mechanism. And when there's the threat of harm, right? Hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain, right? Hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain. 7 things. There are 7 attributes to violence, y'all. I'm going to say it again. Hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain. 7 attributes of violence. And anytime that those potentials come online, there is a threat, right? There's a perceived threat or an actual threat. And we can either run from that threat, which is flight, or fright, right? We become frightened and we run away. Or we fight, right? That's the anger, that's the lean in. And we fight off the threat. And so we have fight or flight. And so when a person perceives that they're going to fail and they become frightened that they'll fail, they run away from the potential of failing. And so they hide. They hide, or they run away from it, or they move away from it, or they don't even try because there's a potential that they will not succeed. And that potential is more frightening and damaging to them than to actually go for it and slip up and not do it. And so for me, one of the things that I've done for myself was I had to reformat myself around the idea of failure itself. Now, there are many people that believe that failure is a part of life, and you have to fail in order to succeed. And that type of vocabulary for me it can be very detrimental to a person's process. And so what I did for myself, and you can do this for yourself if you so choose, is I decided to remove failure as an option in my life. And I changed, and it all started off in 1981. I went to the movies and I saw a movie, and there was this little green man in the movie, a little green alien. And he said some really, really important words to me. He said, "Do or do not, there is no try." Do or do not, there is no try. Yes, y'all, I'm talking about Yoda. Okay, 1981. Was it? Yeah, I think it was 1981. And I was in the movies, and I saw this movie, and it was The Empire Strikes Back. And that little green man said, "Do or do not, there is no try." And that that stuck with me for a long time. And I didn't use it until later in my life. And I just kept going back to that. I keep trying and I keep failing. I keep trying. And I remember Luke Skywalker trying to lift the X-Wing fighter out of the swamp, and it fell down in the swamp. And then Yoda came and he used the Force and he lifted the ship up out of the swamp and put it to the side. And Luke Skywalker says, I don't believe it. And Yoda said, that is why you fail. And so if I don't believe I can succeed, I will probably fail. And it has to do with a belief structure. And what we teach in the Condor approach is a knowledge space. You know that you can, you know that you will, and you know that you do. It's also a confidence space. And it's a big teaching that we have. And so when you are in the space of believing that you can fail, you will. And so what I did was I removed the idea of failure from my vocabulary, and I made everything a process of doing. Everything was a process of doing. I am doing until it gets done. And so it may not look how I've projected it will look, but I'm getting closer, and I'm going to do this again, and I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to recalculate, and I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it again until it gets done. And so I'm actively in the process of getting something done. I never fail. If I stop doing it, I put it to the side for a while. I may come back to it later. It doesn't mean I failed. And when I remove the idea that I have failed from the situation, it changes the dynamic of threat. I don't have to live up to anybody else's potentials or expectations. I know what I'm doing. I'm on my clock. And when I can honor my clock and not have to worry about somebody else's clock or expectations for me, it's a lot easier on my body. It's a lot easier on my psyche, and I can do things according to my pace. And so another thing that I do is I support people in getting their environment to support them. You know, are you pressuring your kids to get all A's? That was a thing in my household. You better come in here with all A's. If you don't come in here with all A's, it's a failure. Like, it was a big thing. If I came in the house with a B or a C, I got in trouble. I got scorned. It was like, you better get A's. I'm paying all this money for school and all this stuff. It was a big deal. I was scared to come in my house. And so what I did was I forged my report cards. I did all kinds of stuff to make sure that my parents did not see what was going on with my report cards. I was so afraid of failure. And we've baked it into our society. We've talked it into our kids. We've done all these things to ourselves to keep ourselves in a space where we are afraid to fail, so we don't shine, or we won't push extra hard. We'll just get above the just making the grade line, because we're so afraid of failing. If we go beyond that to show our greatness, to be in our greatness, we won't do it, because there's an expectation of how something should look in its greatest iteration, and that's too high for me to get. That's only for that kind of basketball is only for Michael Jordan, right? This is that, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Magic Johnson. We can only reach that level of basketball if we're those people. Otherwise, we're a failure. And then there's the other end of it, where it's like everybody gets a trophy, which I don't exactly agree with that, but that's a whole other podcast. Anyway, there's this expectation to outcome that we have, and if we don't get the outcome, we get frightened and we run away from the possibility. And that being frightened of failure is a space that will activate a person's fight or flight complex, and they will become completely petrified, completely frozen, and their state will be stuck. And what do you do? What do you do about that? You change your idea of what failure is. And that's the rearticulation of language. That's bringing somebody else into a context. That's not beating your kids up about not getting what you want them to get. That's not beating your partner up about not showing up the way you want them to show up. If they're not showing up the way you want them to show up, is that the relationship for you? Are you going to bend them into something else, or push them into a space where they're frightened of you? Is that the kind of relationship you want to have? And so this is where, coming into terms with yourself of what are your standards for life, for yourself? Can you be in a process? Can you lean into that process? It's really, really important stuff. And so there's a big deal with fear of failure. And so many people have come to work with Kole and I in the past when we were facilitating psychedelic experiences, and they got to re-articulate what fear is and what failure is. And when they did that, it changed everything. And they went and they talked to their people out after the psychedelic experience. They took the next steps of speaking to their people. Hey, listen, I feel like a failure around you. And the people that they live with, the people that they love, were usually like, hey, listen, I don't care about any of that. I care about you. And so they got to get past the barriers of believing that somebody didn't want them because they weren't a certain way, that they were holding themselves to a standard of that they didn't even really want to be. Something from the past, something from school, something from kids at school or people at a job somewhere. This is a really, really interesting space, y'all. And, you know, it's really wonderful to achieve things, and you can achieve things. When you achieve things under really, really high pressure, it can be deleterious, man. It can be really, really terrible on you. I mean, it can, you know, they say a lot of pressure makes diamonds. Yeah. Diamonds are really nice, and then they get stuck on a ring. They just look pretty, and they're really stiff. I can't tell you how many sports figures Kole and I have worked with that have completely destroyed their bodies, made a lot of money, destroyed their bodies. And then they come to us with all this trauma to unravel because they were the best at what they did. They were successful. They were so afraid to fail that they pushed their bodies beyond. That's the other end of it, right? They push their bodies way beyond capacity. And so their knees are jacked up. Their back is torn out. They can't have kids. All of these weird things because they pushed their body into a space where I was so afraid to fail that I went through all the pain. I moved through all the pain. I broke all the bones. I did all these things. And now I got the money, and I have the mansion and the house and the car, and I can't even function in this body anymore. And I hate myself. How many suicide attempts Kole and I had to support people through because they were ready to run away from life, because that fear of failure drove them into a space that they didn't know how to navigate. And so the re-articulation of this, y'all, is tremendously important. The fear of failure is really, really interesting. And my invitation is to remove the idea that you can fail from your vocabulary. Just remove it. You can't fail. There's no failing. You're doing what you're doing, and you're doing it the way you're doing it. It's not good or bad. It is what it is. And if you want to achieve something and you're not achieving it, get in the room with somebody who's much more efficient and effective at doing what you're looking to do, so you can learn from them and be in your process of learning. People don't get great just by sitting around. They get great by doing things, right? And we all have greatness in us. We have to nurture that greatness and grow it. And it's your own process, family. This is your process. Nobody else's process is yours. And if you don't ride your process, you ain't gonna get to where you want to be. You got to ride the process. Stop cutting corners. Can't cut corners, y'all. You got to be in the process and get with people who are going to ride the process with you. Invest in yourself, not just financially. Invest in your time. Invest in being around people who are quality, and get it, y'all. I love you, and I'm so grateful for you being here, listening to this podcast. As a coach, be mindful of the people that come to you and are talking about failure. It's a big deal, and that might be something to put on your intake form, coaches. All my condors out there, you know, what is your relationship to failure? Just throw that on your intake form and just see what you get. What do you get when you put that on your intake form? What's your relationship to failure? That'd be a fascinating one. If I was ever to start doing groups again, I'd definitely throw that on my intake form. What's your relationship to failure? I have what's your relationship to the truth on mine. But what's your relationship to failure? And just see what you stir up. Particularly if you work with people who are sports figures, if you work with entrepreneurs who are who are making a lot of bread, who are creating a lot of systems, what's your relationship to failure? Just stir the pot. And if you are an entrepreneur and you have things come up around failure, what is your relationship? Just ask yourself that question. What is my relationship to failure? And my invitation with that is, you know, if you could put it in a context of failure being a person. What is your relationship to failure? And if failure was a person, who would it be? Right? Would it be the guy down the block smoking weed? Would it be your sister? Would it be your father, your mom? Who would it be? Would it be your homie that just never does anything? Well, who would it be? And then start to just lean into that. And you start to create a relationship with what that is for you. Do you want to hang out with the idea of failure all the time? Running from failure? Who are you running from and why are you running from it? Let's lean into it. Do you have a support system around you that if you don't achieve something right now, you will be nurtured and supported to keep going if that's what you want, or changing your trajectory if that's what you want, still being supported in your decision? If that's really what you want, then let's get the environment to support you, y'all. This is where we build a life team around you. And it's all about the Condor approach, y'all. I love you. I'm so grateful that you're listening to this podcast. You know, fear of failure is a real thing. It's rampant in our world. It leads to a lot of people pleasing, imposter syndrome. People are afraid to be seen as failures. There's a lot of lying. There's a lot of shame involved. And I did say I was going to speak about shame. Shame comes from the idea that something is wrong, bad, broken, not enough, or too much about you, right? And if something is wrong with you that you are unable to succeed, you'll hide, and then you'll be alone, right? Something's wrong. Something's bad about you. Something's not enough. Something's broken. You're too much for this. You're never going to succeed because of those things. That's shame. And shame is in the undercurrent of fear, and it causes fright. It causes a person to be frightened by being excommunicated or exiled from the community, from the tribe, from the herd. We are pack animals. When we get excommunicated, we die in one way or another. Physically, socially, there's a death to it. And so shame can drive a person into loneliness. And that is another fear space. Shame is a derivative of the idea that you're separate from everything, from people, from the universe, from God, whatever you call whatever we come from. You're separate from that and everybody else. So you hide, or you run away, or you fight against it. And when you do that, you're by yourself and you can't succeed because your light's not shining, y'all. And if your light doesn't shine and we can't see how to support your light in glowing as much as possible, we can't support you in getting to the space that you will succeed, whatever that success is called. And so, success and failure it's all ideological. It's all a belief space. And if you believe in failure and success, then you lean into that stuff. I believe I'm doing some things and I want those things to look this way. And if they don't, how do I get them to look that way? That's it. And so I manipulate the environment. I utilize tools. I bring in community, all of that stuff to get where I want to be. And I remove the shame dynamics. I remove the fright dynamics. I remove all of that from the situation. And I can still be frightened and do something anyway. But I make sure that the environment fortifies me. My friends and my families fortify me so that I can do the things that I want to do. So I'm glad I got to bring shame in there. I didn't want to miss that. So awesome, y'all. Well, I know that this has been helpful for you because it's helpful for me to bring it back up and rehash it for myself. If you know someone that can benefit from this, please share this podcast. Go to the thing that I told you about in the beginning. Hit the subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast. I also want you to rate this podcast. Give it a 5-star rating. Review it. Drop a comment, share it with a friend, and please don't forget, I love you. We are having another Condor Approach training June 13th to the 15th. That's the 3-day for just the concepts for anybody that wants to come. If you want to be a coach or Condor Coach, it's the 13th to the 17th. Would love to teach you this stuff so that you can teach your clients, you can teach your friends and family. Lean into it, y'all. This is life and game-changing stuff. When you look at the testimonials for the Condor Approach, it's astounding. So head on over to thecondorapproach.com and check out what we're doing. We have a training in Austin, Texas. Would love to see you there in person. Come join us. Come join this community of people that we have as we move towards this mission of training 10,000 people in this method. 10,000. That's our objective. That's our mission right now. And then in that space, infusing these methods of leaning into yourself worldwide so that we have a world full of sovereign people who don't have to take from each other and hurt each other and put each other down because they don't have the sovereignty in their own space. So thank you so much. I love you. Get into that fear of failure and change it into something else.
Do or do not. There is no try.
I love you. Be easy, be free, and remember,
integration is not optional.